All right, welcome along to another episode of the Deep In Coffee Hour, the show where we go deep on projects building the decentralized physical infrastructure of the future. I am your host, Neil Sisson, and folks, it is a historic episode. This is the first ever episode of the Deep In Coffee Hour since we've been fully independent from Hevelo. So just myself, a colleague, and an OpenGlaw AI assistant to help us do research and get some of the stuff ready. So now basically I can really get into trouble, and I will do my best to do that. But seriously, today's episode, I'm actually really fired up because I get to talk to two of the most exciting projects, or at least most, let's say, full of momentum projects in the space, it feels like at the moment. In a really, really interesting area, which is to do with robotics and around robotics and AI and sensory data and all of the things that essentially are going to power the future, and also how we can all maybe get a tiny piece of that. With all that said, I would love to welcome Theo from Silencio Network to the stage. Nils is running a little bit late, I believe. He should be joining us at some stage soon. Hopefully, Theo, how are you?
I'm doing great, Neil. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, listen, thanks for agreeing to come on. We had one of your colleagues, Daniel, on last year at one stage, back in the days when you guys were all about, audio data and noise pollution and all that stuff. And at the time, he had hinted that there was something else coming, but couldn't tell us an awful lot about it. I guess let's start at the start. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, how you got into deep in Web3, and what's going on with Silencio right now?
Yeah, would love to. So first of all, thanks for organizing this, putting this together, and having Silencio back here. I'm one of the co-founders of Silencio Network. My name is Theo, and we've been building Silencio for nearly 4 years by now. So we started when deepen wasn't even a term that was called back then, but we saw something early in coordinating and orchestrating human behavior through Web3. And what really excited us back then, it was this energy that you could capture in this orchestration of human activity to create data. And throughout our process, we noticed that there's a strong demand for training data for AI. So it kind of like converged with the rise, at least, of consumer AI and what we were doing. And so, long story short, today Silencio has more than 2 million users in 180 countries who are delivering voice data for machine learning purposes. And anything else you would like me to dive deeper into, or?
Yeah, maybe you could give us an example of what you mean by voice data when for training AI. What does that actually look like in real terms?
Yeah, exactly. So roughly 20% of the people who interact with AI today do so via voice, so speech. And so if you have ever opened your Gemini or your ChatGPT and done so via voice, asked it questions, it needs to understand your language, it needs to understand your accent, and it needs to tailor to that. And so for that, you need massive amounts of data. There's over 7,000 spoken languages, 40 to 50,000 dialects, but only 3% of that variation is captured and trained on today. And that's where we saw opportunity for Silencio to position itself with our existing network to capture exactly all those edge cases of languages. And then it's not only the language, you have to imagine there's professions within the languages. So it's, medical doctors, engineers, and so on. Yeah, exactly. So variations are endless. And then with that said, there's a lot of opportunity to still grow into, other data sets in the future that will empower AI through on the field data.
Right. Yeah, that's super interesting. So, how does it actually work? Like, do I have an application on my phone and then I see things and I start to actually train based on what I'm looking at, or is it just listening to me all the time?
No, that's a good question. So it's not a passive element. You have to go into our portal, you create an account, and then you answer always truthfully. You know your origin, where you're from, what languages you speak, and so on. We're trying to collect obviously genuine data that has commercial value, and so there's two things that you can do today, which is single speaker. So this is you reading, for example, texts out loud, or maybe like an open monologue where it asks you a question about what your favorite football team is, and you get to discuss that. Or you have now a new feature that we launched last week, which is conversational. So this is like a space like this that happens in which two people meet and interact with each other. And what we're looking for is the genuine interaction, and this is really, really tough for AI labs to fake, because synthetic data only gets you to a certain degree there, but the real world is messy, is emotional, is fuzzy. And so that's where Silencio's strength comes in capturing those real nuances.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a super interesting point, because I think, like with the AI, a lot of the large language models now seem to have, people are saying that they've captured a huge percentage of the overall data that's out there, but there's always the corners, like, the bits that, like you say, they don't. I mean, in Ireland, we have, I don't know, I've been to places, part of this country, where I can't understand what the people are saying. These are
Right.
my fellow countrymen. So
and,
it's a
and
small.
imagine and imagine as AI takes off, not only, I mean, on the front of your phone and computer, and the way that we interact with technology is going to be more and more via voice, but it's then also the moment that these bits leak into the atoms, and we have robotics on the on the street, on the field, and you have to interact with them. And so they're gonna not be able perhaps to understand the Irish farmer of the very north.
Yeah,
Given
or
your use
very, very
case.
south. Yeah, there's definitely some
Yeah.
edge
And
accents,
also
right?
one point that you mentioned, I mean, the element of scraping, right? So the models, yes, initially what they did was scrape the entire internet, and so that means that they all had the same access to the same data sets. But at one point, the way that they will differentiate themselves is energy, compute, but then largely also data. And so the more diverse their data, the stronger their models, and the better the usability of these models will be, and then the stickiness towards their end users.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Just even at the interaction level. I mean, I've been playing around with OpenClaw pretty much since it launched, and by playing around, I mean it's bordering on an addiction at this point. But it's just super fascinating. However, you can really tell that there's a massive difference between how this is going to sound really stupidly obvious, but there's a huge difference between how a human goes about getting stuff done and how an AI goes about getting stuff done. And sometimes, the efficiency that we have as a team, let's say, is broken by a lack of comprehension, like a lack of the communication piece in between the two, partially because of that structural difference in how we work, but also, and capability, obviously. But I think also it's in part due to the way that the voice communication works, versus what the AI wants to communicate in, which is obviously like, markdown and text. So I think, yeah, I could see that being hugely valuable in the future. Who buys that? Like, would you be selling the data to OpenAI or Anthropic or somebody, or is it more specific to?
Exactly. It's AI labs, so they're looking at an immense volume of this data, and the way that they deal with right now is with data collection companies like ourselves. You can think of maybe a prominent one was Scale AI that did this obviously at an incredible size for Meta. And I think that we're doing something very similar just now in the use case of voice, but via a long tail principle. So essentially through Web3. There's currently right now like 350 or 360 AI labs out there that are all training their own models. The number is growing, and they all need proprietary data sets.
Right. Interesting. Do you see it as having a super long? Is there? I suppose my question is there a point at which all the data is gathered? There is no more human data, and we just reach a point where it's like it has to be synthetic from there because all of data has been amassed. Or is there always going to be? I mean, I know language changes, so maybe there's a
context is very difficult to randomize, synthetically. In our case, the variations are, I wouldn't say, if not endless, but close to endless in terms of professions and languages and dialects. But as I said, the beauty is still in having a network that wants to capture data. And so we are all the time looking at new data sets that we can add to this. And so it's not going to be limited to voice. In the future, we could have, other data sets that empower robotics. So, for example, through smart wearables. And it's going to be much cheaper to source this from a decentralized perspective. It is much cheaper than to do so from a centralized perspective. Good examples involve, I don't know, like Hive Mapper versus Google Maps. So it takes them a fraction of the cost to source that data.
Right. And I suppose it's a little bit more economically distributed, for want of a better way to put it, because
yep, and
you guys are sharing, right?
Right, and imagine, imagine when a AI company, for example, wants on-demand data. Yeah, this is happening more and more. So they used to ask for off-the-shelf mostly because that's what they were used to, and now they're getting accustomed to this idea, like, hey, we could set up a campaign together in which we source, X and Y type of data in this type of format, and you have the network, you have the community. We push incentives behind it, and we collect that within a matter of weeks. And so we can provide a sample data set pretty fast, and then can go into several months commitments of recurring revenues with AI labs where they source tens of thousands of hours. And so I think for us, it made sense to position ourselves there. There's a very clear ask, a very clear signal from the market, from the demand side. And I think DeepIn has done really well with the supply side, but has mostly lacked on the demand side. And at least I'm happy to announce that for ourselves, we're in a trajectory of profitability this year. And so, yeah.
Amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I was going to ask you about all that side of things as well, because it was my experience last year that a lot of DeepIns, like you say, they were very focused on building and the supply side. But
that's a common problem in crypto, right? It's not only DeepIn, it's
right.
the entire infrastructure game, right? We have tons of layer ones, but no one using them, and so I think that's exactly the problem, the applications.
Yeah, 100%. You've got a chicken and egg type of a situation where you have to sort of choose which one do we put our resources to first, and and I guess it's probably in the nature of the builder as well that you want to try and solve a problem and you want to build cool tech in this space. I know certainly as a marketing person, I've been brought into a lot of projects when they were like, yeah, we've already built it, and now we were just thinking we should probably start to do some marketing.
Well, it's and I'm like, kind of like pie in the sky fallacy, right? That build and they will come. I mean, I think what's always valuable is a network, and that's in today's world. Even, I mean, we're developing technology that they cost us, if not gone to zero, through vibe coding and the applications that we have at hand. What it used to cost, hundreds of thousands of
I know.
dollars. Today, you can, with a simple subscription, you launch products within a matter of hours. And I think that cost has transitioned to zero. So what's valuable isn't the technology really. I think it's the network behind it.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess you guys have already got all that figured out because you already had a fantastic product in the noise collection side of things, and buyers lined up for what that was. So really, is it even a pivot? It's just probably more of a product extension where you're just taking a wider data set. Oh, Nils is
Exactly. I see it as an enhancement. We're still within the audio game, right? And this one, I mean, a company will always move towards where the signal is coming from. And in our case, I think I've rarely seen startups begin with one mission and really end up just doing that. I think as you go discovering, it's like an onion, you peel, every time new pieces of it, and then you see where else you can develop and where else you can capture value and deliver them. Yeah. Hey, Niels, what's up?
Hey, Theo.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, Theo. Do you know what it is we started doing at Auki? Like the original thing that we were doing back in 2019?
No, I didn't know.
We were doing shared augmented reality for the tabletop game Warhammer.
Oh wow! Yeah, it's quite an evolution.
We started with making augmented reality for these little guys here.
That's cool. Right. So look where it took you, right?
Yeah, I mean that was how we learned about the challenge of positioning, right? And that modern devices don't understand very much about their environment, that you can't use the GPS for these kind of highly precise use cases. And we actually told our investors back in 2021 that an iPhone is just a robot with no arms and legs. And AR glasses are robots with no arms and legs. And if we can crack being really good at shared augmented reality by cracking shared perception, then we have an enormous head start on robotics. The one thing that we were wrong about is that we thought that full AR glasses would come before the robots came. But yeah, we were wrong about that. I mean, the Vision Pro came out. It was just a lot bigger than we expected.
Yeah, AR glasses have had several kind of like pushes to market, and I think it was always like a timing thing, right? I think 10 years or more, no, 15 years ago by now, I think was the first try with Google.
Google Glass, that was a disaster for them, I mean, as a product, but I think it was just ahead of its time.
Well, speaking of that, something I've been sharing with the robotics community a lot recently, because most people in robotics are considerably younger than I am. It's a lot of people in their early 20s in robotics today. Is, hey guys, we should remember the story of Magic Leap. Does that name ring a bell, Neil? Magic Leap?
Not for me. No, so, I mean. Maybe a distant
very interesting story, right? So in 2014, I was raising venture money for the first time for my previous startup, and as a fairly autistic founder, I was doing a lot of research on fundraising mechanics, etc. So I remember very clearly that like the median Series A round in the 2014 era was around 2 million at 10 million. 2 at 10 was a median Series A back in 2014, right? And in early 2014, an AR goggles company raised 50 million in a Series A in a time where, the median Series A was 2 at 50. But it gets wilder than that, right? Later that same year, they raised 500 million in 2014 from Andreessen Horowitz and Kleiner Perkins. And the reason why is very similar to what was happening in robotics now. What's happening in robotics now? The story was that, look, augmented reality is going to touch every industry. It's going to be so incredibly disruptive. It's going to touch on every life. And sure, the headsets are big now, but just wait 10 years. People will be wearing like contact lenses or something. But what happened ultimately was that Magic Leap kind of failed to make significant money. So they had sucked all this capital out of the market and then failed to make money, making AR and VR largely unfundable ever since.
Right.
And I think that there's a very big risk that this happens with robotics this time around too. If some of the big players like Figure, who have raised these enormous pre-revenue valuations, if they fail to meaningfully generate revenue, um, it could make it very hard in the next few years for robotics companies to raise their Series A. And we're already seeing some of that kind of happen with some of the more active and exuberant investors in the robotics space have pulled back their investment and said like, valuations got a little bit crazy, boys. We gotta slow down here.
Right.
So even though I do believe that it is true that augmented reality is going to touch on every single business, and it is true that robotics is going to touch on every single business. The timelines are not necessarily always aligned with the hype cycle.
Yeah, yeah, I
Right.
fully agree.
I think with AI now being such a big piece of the puzzle, I think a lot more people can see how it would, it doesn't take as much of an imagination leap, basically. Like AR glasses without some sort of super powered way to make that useful. Same with robotics, right? Like if you think about a robot, I mean, how useful is a robot really in the real world? At
I
least
think
the Optimus type, and without serious like brain power for it to be able to get around, and not even just the spatial awareness piece, but the like be useful to me piece. Like there's no point in like if you can't make me dinner or go get my groceries or whatever, how useful is it for as a consumer product?
I think
Well,
I
where
think
we are now with consumer products is last month, Weave Robotics, a San Francisco company, started shipping robots to some select beta testers in Silicon Valley for laundry folding, just one very, very specific task. And it does fold laundry, but, does so very, very slowly. And we don't know what the how quickly the software is going to move in the age of AI. A lot of things are moving very, very quickly now. uh, but we can see, just from a performance point of view, we're pretty far away from having the kind of robot that the general public imagines they will have, that can do all of these kinds of different tasks. So
Right.
a pretty common bet with American investors is that you have to go straight for AGI. Go straight for AGI. Um, don't even try to uh, make like a robot product now. So some of the most well-funded robotics companies literally have as a strategy and their investor support to not try to make any revenue now or next year or the year after next or the year after next. Just focus, focus, focus on getting on AGI. And I think that's in a very big contrast to what China is doing, because China is releasing programmable, mass-produced robots uh, that they don't do anything outside of shake hand and dance out of the
Dancing.
box, but they're
Yeah.
programmable, so you can
Right.
teach them. Almost all of the world's robotics research is done on Chinese hardware today.
Mm.
In fact, the early versions of Weave Robotics and What New Robotics and other robot companies that are making revenue today started or may still be on Chinese hardware.
also in terms of what drives those timelines, no, like if you think about it, or at least the common perception is always that these technologies come in a form of isolated form, and if you think like social media only really took off because of mobile and cloud computing, in 2006, that enabled that to happen. And today, I think AI and largely the road towards AGI is going to be enabled through exactly more sensors on the ground, and that's where either NEOTS or our team comes in. Many other projects as well, obviously. But
Yeah, exactly. it's funny. It's not the part that people think about, but it's so critical, right?
Yeah, the data piece is fundamental.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Seventy percent
It's
of the
the
world
oil.
economy, 70% of the world economy, both as roughly 70%, both in terms of percentage of GDP, but also percentage of total headcount. Uh, so 70% of the world economy, both on those measures, is still tied to physical locations and physical labor. So the market for physical AI is clearly bigger than the market for LLMs. The jump from internet-based LLMs to whatever form physical AI will take is pretty much an automatic 3x increase on the total addressable market of AI. There is no there is no bigger industry. I think in a long enough on a long enough time scale, there are only two sinks of technology, right? It's physical AI and longevity, right? Those are the two really, really, really big games. The only two big industries that will still be here 20 years from now. And the challenge with physical AI is you can't just train it on the internet. The physical world is not on the internet.
Mm.
AI cannot see the physical world. They cannot hear the physical world. They cannot touch the physical world. So I think that the ultimate destiny of Deepin, apropos being here for Deepin Coffee, is that Deepin will evolve into being the decentralized nervous system of physical AI. That is the ultimate role of blockchain itself. I think in the fullness of time, when we look back at Bitcoin, that's just a precursor for laying the groundwork for the decentralized nervous system for AI. Because if there's one thing that uh, AI can never replace itself, what does AI want to buy? What does AI want to buy? It wants to have access to the physical world. It needs to have relevant data, not just training data, but real time data about what is happening in the world. And that is something that is still going to be a viable business model 1,000 years from now. You can still be selling data to AI 1,000 years from now. And there are not many business models like that can survive the singularity. And I think DPINs, specifically the kinds of DPINs that are focused on sensors in the physical world, and even I believe, but I'm less certain about hyperlocal compute access in the physical world, is something that still going to be relevant a 1,000 years from now. The sensor access, for sure.
Is that because latency? Do you think local compute because of the latency it takes for information to get from A to B?
I do think so. So 1,000 years is a long time, and a lot can happen with compute power and battery power in 1,000 years. But uh,
Mhm.
probably nothing significant is going to change about the speed of light. So
Probably. Safe
so
bet.
latency is very likely to always be an issue. Um, and I think in the world we live in today, right? Like, Neil, do you know how much battery a humanoid robot has?
I have no idea.
If you had to guess, how much battery do you get out of one of these unitary robots?
I mean, I don't know. I suppose it depends on how efficient it is at using it, and what you're looking for it to do as well. Obviously, I mean, if it's doing backflips, I'd imagine not very many.
Let's say it was,
If it's
just
folding laundry,
sort
I
something
think
at a belt, pretty low effort.
like
How
a
long could it do
45
that?
minutes.
I'd say so. Yeah,
It's not
something like that.
not quite that bad, but really an hour to 2 hours is what you'll expect from a robot before they need to from one of these
Charge.
humanoid robots before they need to recharge. And a
Right.
big reason why is spatial computing and physical AI is incredibly compute intensive. State of the art augmented reality glasses have half an hour of battery, like full
Mm.
augmented reality glasses. The state of the art ones that you can't buy on the open market, you have to kind of steal them from Facebook's research lab. Half an hour of battery, right? Um,
That's a very
and
small form factor, though.
Well, there's still about 100 grams, and 800 years of history shows that humans will not wear for more than a little while glasses that weigh more than 45 grams. So, the glasses still have to go down to half the size. We're not talking about
Right.
like the Meta Ray-Bans. They're not AR glasses, right?
Right.
The full AR glasses are things like Project Orion and Project Aria, and you can't buy those today. Like you can only be given them for research purposes from Facebook. And yeah, they have about half an hour of battery. So if we ever, and this was one of the founding beliefs of turning Auki into a D-pin in 2021 is if we ever want to see all day wearable glasses, right? We have to move the compute off the face and into the hyperlocal environment. Can't move it to the cloud because latency is too great. It has to be, you have to be able to access hyperlocal compute the same way you access Wi-Fi. And that was one of the original ideas behind building this thing we now call the real world web. We need the robots and the glasses are going to need access to hyperlocal compute and hyperlocal data in real time about what the world is like.
Right.
We need much more a long-term conviction, not only from founders like Niels. Like when you hear that, I wish investors would have the same scope towards the industries that they're in. No, you were saying earlier, investors already driving back investments of their own in this field just because it gets less, because it's more quiet. I guess it's exactly the moment where these companies continue to build. And I think, Niels, you've been here for years. We've been here since, I don't know, 2021, I guess, or something like that. Building and even now, if it's more quiet, like the thesis remains the same. And so you have to build with that conviction.
I think it's more true now than ever, but it's also, it would be much harder to start that company today, even though it's much more, I think it's easier to convince someone today that Auki is right to build what we are building. It would still be harder to raise the money today compared to 2021. I mean, in 2021, money was falling out of the trees.
Maybe, but I think today people understand that these models need a lot of data, and I think that's something that maybe in 2021 we didn't have that present. No, at least not the general public did. Yeah.
It's a different world now, for sure.
I think, yeah, people didn't know that we were going to need all of this training data. That wasn't in people's RAM, so to speak. I am cautiously bearish on training data collection as a business for robotics. I think it's very hard to get venture scale outcomes on training data. Because the data needs to be properly annotated. Annotating the data costs quite a bit of money. At the end of the day, like even if you're selling very well annotated video data, you get on the order of $100 per hour for well annotated video data for robot training. Some people might get $150, but it's around $100 an hour for very, very well annotated data. And that, it doesn't cost you much less than that to make an hour of well annotated video data. So I do think that there has been this big investor push towards creating the scale AI for robotics. But ultimately, I think the scale AI for robotics is probably scale AI. But also, it's going to be hard to get truly venture scale outcomes on training data. What's more interesting is the data that the robots will still need 1,000 years from now. Like training will eventually be a solved problem. Like eventually we will have trained robots that are good enough, and when that happens, the price of the data will collapse. So the most interesting thing, and what I think that probably if I had to make a prediction of like what is Silencio doing 15 years from now, it's much more about feeding real-time context to physical AI rather than training data. Because hopefully, I mean, we're done-ish training the models 15 years from now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's any company I think should have in its flag written innovation. in order to survive 15 years from now and to still be relevant in 15 years, right? I think only those companies who've always betted hard on R&D are still around. And in our case, I mean, one thing that we're seeing is exactly this unit economic for like for audio data. And in our case, like single speakers being paid up to like $80 an hour. More like conversational speaker, like 3 parties, is being paid like up to $180, $200, depends on the quality and so on. But then there's those niche examples where it's like medical doctors speaking to one another, and then suddenly that could go up to like $400. And so there's always variation of things. And I think what you have to be receptive as a company, or at least how we're trying to position ourselves, is not on the training data itself, because that's like providing like crude oil. I think it's still pennies on the dollars for if you're not building your own, AI models and then commercializing them. For example, like 11 Labs is doing very successfully.
Right.
We don't have that know-how. We are really good at sourcing at the moment, but I think there's a long trajectory into asking these labs, hey, what's next on your roadmap? What's the highest value data set at the moment? And as we build that, it's a library of data sets, and that's gonna be one conversation. But then the evolution of that ultimately has to become to build your own models at one point. And it's maybe not gonna be myself doing that. It's gonna be much smarter people, hopefully, that we can attract.
Sorry, Theo, can I just ask you a question on something you just said there?
Yeah.
When you're saying $80 to $180, are you talking about people currently training through the Silencio network, or is that an aspirational?
No, that's the price that we
market
get
rate?
paid.
Okay.
That's the price, the unit economic of the data that we sell.
Okay.
Exactly. And then we're paying users. Actually, we started doing this a few weeks back in stables. And now if
Okay.
you hold, our token, you can earn like up to $20 an hour. And depending on what professions you are, we're thinking to, scale that up. And so people, depending if they have a background that is like a medical doctor, for example, they can earn much more ultimately. But right now, the average user can earn $10 an hour for delivering data.
What that looks like is fully locked in. I'm conversing with the app. Basically, I'm fully engaged with the application.
Qualified. So of if you follow our guidelines, our terms of conditions, that's essentially being in a quiet room delivering this data, qualified data. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, that's definitely.
I mean, in our world, $10 maybe in the US is not that much, let's say. But you have to think that the GDP globally is very different, and exactly what the type of data that we're trying to attract mostly is from edge cases at the moment. And so that's where at least the stablecoin movement has allowed us to be sourcing like 2,000 hours a day still. And we're just trying to make that smoother every week, that, we have foreseeable payouts and so on. But essentially, one of the pain points of Deepens was always for the user side, at least it's like, hey, how much can I earn here? And we try to give them an answer through that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable. I think if you're going to ask people to,
there's other companies. There's other companies that are doing this really well on a Web 2 level. And like there's a company called Mercor, for example. They raised, I think, at a like $11 billion valuation. And you're going to see they're paying out like $3 million a day. But this is to like biologists and PhD type of people. Very smart data collection that they're doing. That's a different game. And right now we're doing our thing.
So do you have a target or a goal that you are trying to reach, or is it just like whatever the pipe is flowing in, we figure out how to divvy that out?
I think the biggest challenge that we have as a company at the moment is that we are doing a lot contract based, and we have AI labs coming back recurrently as well, which is a positive sign. But what we have to transition is into like a recurring revenue out of that. So instead of doing contract based, which the contracts are getting bigger all the time, we have to find ways to give them access to this data on a flat fee per month or something like that. But for us, it's winning on the voice vertical, and then we're thinking mid-year to expand to many more data sets as well. But only once we get the demand secured, because the hosting of this is incredible already now. It's one of our biggest cost centers, and so if we host all type of data without having this explicit demand on the other side, it's just going to eat up costs, and then the client might want it in different formats, and that's, I think, something that users, or at least the general public, needs to understand. AI labs always have kind of like different type of requests. It's never like a standardized, hey, this is, you have this off the shelf and I will need this a million times. It's always they have a little bit of variations inside.
Yeah, that's welcome to humanity.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, that's the way it always is. Cool. So what are you guys most excited about? I just looking at the year 2026, I think it's going to be, I'm quite excited for DeepIn this year. I think 2025 was underwhelming, but I think I saw in Masari's report that they're saying spatial awareness is going to be what they're predicting to be one of the biggest growth areas for DeepIn in 2026. Why do you think that is, Nils? And are you excited about it?
So I think that DeepIn as a category was incredibly polluted by a bunch of projects that were like GPU sharing or whatever, without a clear use case for why anyone would need that compute in that format, and not very competitive unit economics. But when you look at DeepIn, specifically the DeepIns that become access to the physical world, right? That are placing sensors in the physical world, or putting any kind of infrastructure that has a spatial constraint, right? Like Uber is a DeepIn, and so is Airbnb, and they have spatial constraints in that if you remove 100,000 cars in San Francisco and you instead put them in Chile, that has changed the quality of the network, right? Whereas that was not true for most of the DeepIns in the DeepIn wave, right? And I think projects like, well, I mean, my go-to is GeoDNet, Mike Horton's project. I think is just such a slam dunk case for what it is that DeepIn is good at, right? So what GeoDNet is doing is they are putting RTK stations out in the world, real-time kinematic stations that improve the quality that you can get from GPS. So in outdoor use cases for things like lawnmower robots to agriculture robots to drone delivery, things that are outdoor with possible line of sight, they get the quality of GPS down to centimeters instead of meters, right? So 2 orders of magnitude better. And they have built the largest RTK network in the world, right? And that wouldn't be possible without the business model of DeepIn, right? If Mike was centrally planning where to put these RTK stations, that would just never have worked, and it would have been very, very capex intensive. So instead, the ability to put this decision to the original AI, the free market, right, to figure out where the hardware should go to generate coverage, has now demonstrably made the biggest RTK network in the world. And as we see more drones, more robots, etc., they will need this kind of infrastructure. They will need things like GeoDNet. They will need things like Auki. They will need things like Helium to access the physical world. And I'm always optimistic that this year is the year, but ultimately the the final destiny of DePIN is to be this this nervous system with these spatial constraints. And after a couple of very long conversations with the authors of this recurring DePIN paper, uh, I hope to have had some impact on them understanding that this is the destiny of DePIN. Spatial
Right.
DePINs are absolutely inevitable. Be it this year or next year, it doesn't matter. They're inevitable. And GeoNet are the most successful now in demonstrating. um, I mean, I think Helium is very impressive in terms of the amount of revenue they have, and they're the OGs, obviously. Um, but but Helium is not the biggest telco, right? But GeoNet really is the world's largest RTK network, which is why I think they're just incredibly impressive. Uh, Mike, if you're listening, I'm such a big fan.
Yeah,
Cheers,
likewise. I
Mike.
think GeoNet is just an amazing success story, and definitely a beacon of light in the space. Theo, what are you excited about in 2026 for the space and Silencio?
I think it's also similar to what Niels touched. So the maturing of the space. So hopefully things seem more quiet now, and I like that. I like building a business and looking out for the longevity of the business. In our case, turning this company into a profitable company. That's something that any builder and startup founder can be happy with initially. But I'm looking 2 steps ahead, where else we can move. And in our cases, the biggest value or proposition or the biggest moat is filling that data gap for AI labs. And that's where we are getting that resonance from these labs as a small startup. And I think it's so cool to be able to have those conversations with these giants that are giving you the opportunity to source different things. And I think we just have to do a really good case in communicating that clearly. And things are messy always, and we try to work with that conviction. But I'm very excited about maturing this company and seeing what other data sets we can capture for them, and ultimately becoming, I don't know if like a marketplace, but essentially a bridge between the real world, having access to millions of users that can capture the data that they need to build their models out.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I'm
there's a win-win
excited
in there.
about the technology kind of catching up to DePIN's crazy vision, also, because as recently as just a few months ago, I was getting pushback that what we were working on was a little bit too sci-fi. Just a few months ago,
Yeah, it's bananas.
but now the
Anybody would
OEMs
say that.
the robot makers are like, holy fuck, what did you guys build? This is amazing, right? We need to bring our robots onto your platform. It was, because the, the industry solves one problem at a time. And the problem that Auki wanted to tackle, collaborative perception, is obviously downstream from the original perception problem, right? So we were very weird saying like, we're not even working on making like perception better, right? Like we're not putting a lot of R&D into like, can we get better at semantic segmentation or anything like that? It's like, no, well, when these things are good, how will they work collaboratively? And people were like, why are you doing this? Like the underlying technology is not even good yet. Why are you concerned about making it collaborative? But it's like, well, and we've been saying this since 2021. Like the moment it's here, it's gonna matter that it's collaborative. So the moment it arrives, we're going to be in a very good position. And really, like just a few months ago, people were like, "What are you like? Why are you trying to solve such a sci-fi problem?" And now they're like, "Nice." So I'm excited
Glad you
about the
spent that
technology
time
catching up.
already.
And also adding to what Neil, our initial discussion that you mentioned, you were addicted to CloudBot. I mean, we have our first 7 or 8 employees that are CloudBots. We give them personalities. It's all fun, but essentially, what Niels is also saying here, I think, is building this infrastructure for these agents to be able to use our data. And I think that's an area that I'm super stoked about. is building something agents want, as the new YC model theme is. And this is exactly where these deepened data networks are going to come in very hard.
So we demonstrated as the first robotics team in the world, as far as I know, no one's challenged me on this claim yet, a couple of months ago, that the first demonstration of large-scale autonomous indoor navigation for a humanoid, where we went live. We went live to a conference. We placed a couple of markers and we filmed the conference with the phones that were in our pocket, no special hardware. We uploaded that video to the real world web where it got processed by community nodes, turned into a map, and then we brought a humanoid robot who had never been there before. And we could ask it, how do we get to this or that booth? And the robot would know, right? When you have an agent in your robot that goes out to solve things in the world for you, this is what that agent will want to spend its money on, because it's not going to want to spend its very limited battery, very limited time on
Right.
looking for shit. It's going to want to
Yeah.
know, where is it? How can I access it? What is the fastest way to get there? And yeah, I mean, a couple of months ago seemed crazy to be working on, but now they're like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Let's come onto your platform.
That does make a lot of sense. I see you all the time sharing videos with robots, little tiny robots doing with no hands. I was kind of wondering about those little hands that don't do anything, other than like look kind of humanoid in shape. What do you guys, other than making dancing videos and obviously testing how they can communicate with each other, do you have any use cases for those, or are they literally just?
So those are the Booster K1. And what's great with the Booster K1 is they are cheaper than a high-end Mac Pro, right? So like they're under $10,000 each, meaning you can afford to experiment with them, you can afford to break them. And even though they don't have hands, I think actually I'm supposed to release an article on this this week, but you could say that robotics is made up of three problems, right? There's the locomotion problem, like teaching the robot how to traverse the environment. There's the manipulation problem, teaching the robot how to touch and interact with the world. And there's the perception problem, right? And if we want to be, appropriately autistic about it, perception is actually spatial semantic perception and mapping and positioning. But let's just call that perception for now. And it turns out that the kind of things that robots can do for us in the world fall pretty neatly into these same three buckets. There are locomotion tasks where the task is go from point A to point B, see self-driving cars, right? There are also manipulation tasks where the task is go fold my laundry, for example. But it turns out there are also plenty of perception tasks in the world. And surprising to many is that these perception tasks are often worth more than the manipulation task. And one example that I'm going to be highlighting in this article that I'm releasing are our friends and partners at Budbreak, who make agricultural robots. And normally when I say agricultural robot, they make robots for vineyards. They assume like, oh, so this is a robot that is harvesting the grapes or is spraying the grapes or doing some kind of manipulation task. No, they look at the grapes. Why? Well, because a single crop destroying disease destroys as much as $60,000 of produce per year per hectare, right? And humans are not super good at spotting this, but you can make a robot that traverses that environment and looks at the grapes and finds this disease so that the human can cut it and save $60,000 worth of grapes per year. Like the perception task is worth a lot. And we found the same thing in retail. One of Europe's largest retailers with over 10,000 associates working the floor, which is still small compared to Walmart that has 2 million people working the floor, right? They flew out to us in Hong Kong and they said, look, we have over 10,000 associates on the floor, and we think that we lose 30 to 60 minutes every single day per employee, predominantly in the morning, due to them not being really sure what they should work on. So what we really, really want is a robot to drive around our store at night and populate an augmented reality task manager of this needs to get fixed, this needs to get fixed, this needs to get fixed. They don't need the robot to fix it. They need the robot to tell them what to do.
Right. Gotcha. It's the data. They need to know what's wrong. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm just conscious, Niels, that Theo has to jump off. Theo, do you want to, any final words before you jump? And do you want to just tell people where they can follow Silencio?
Sure.
We'll have it in the
Thanks.
show notes anyway, so, but.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, obviously, and pleasure to talk. Also, catching up with Niels, really cool too. And yeah, please follow our socials and or myself. Yeah, I'm not the most entertaining tweeter, but Niels has better tweets.
Yeah, go follow Silencio on Twitter, and please
Auki,
give
obviously.
Auki a follow. And if you want some spicy takes about robotics, I'm Brewed Sugar on Twitter.
Fantastic.
That's always good.
Thanks so much for having me, Neil. And Niels, all the best, yeah? Take care, guys.
Yeah, listen.
Cheers.
Thanks, Theo, and thanks for joining us, Niels.
And Neil, my apologies for being so late. I got my wires crossed.
No
I
problem.
thought this was postponed until tomorrow because I was apparently double booked for today.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you joining us. Better late
I can't
than
hear you
never,
anymore,
as they
Neil.
say.
Your audio
Oh.
cut.
Is it? Maybe it's my microphone. No, it seems okay.
That's very weird. As soon as Theo
That is
left,
weird.
I can't hear you anymore.
It's probably a studio. It says that I'm saying things.
That is very unfortunate. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can't.
That is-
I can't hear you.
You know what it
Do you
is?
want me to refresh? Do you want to keep going, or should we call it for today?
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Well,
No.
unfortunately,
Don't know.
I can't hear you.
Okay.
But if you think we're done for today, give
Damn.
me a salute. Otherwise, I'll refresh.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
so
joining.
much for having me. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch up offline about what I missed here in the last minute. All right. See ya.
Thanks, Niels. And hopefully I am still here. Hopefully StreamYard isn't lying to me. And you guys can all still hear me. Yeah, look, two fascinating people from the space. So look, that's a wrap for us today. Thank you to Niels and Theo for joining me on another episode of the Deep in Coffee Hour. Thank you, all of you, for tuning in and for listening again. We will be back again next week. If you haven't already, go check out Silencio, go check out Auki. You'll find them both, the links to both of their X accounts in the description of the live stream tweet. Hope you got value from this conversation. We are now only broadcasting from @DeepInCoffeeHour on X. We're also on YouTube, and you'll be able to pick us up in Spotify and all your podcast places after the fact. We may introduce some more channels again, like Kick and other places like that. But in the meantime, yeah, throw us a subscribe, a like, a share. If you got any value from this conversation, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you know anybody who's building in this space and you think they should be on the show, hit me up on X @NeilSisson or in the Deepin or via the Deep in Coffee Hour X account as well. We're live every Tuesday. Actually, next week we'll be coming at you an hour later than normal at 4 p.m. CET instead of 3 p.m. CET for you fellow Europeans. Until then, see you next time. Stay caffeinated and stay kind. Ciao.